Hey, Brian from Snake Bites here. You looking for a pet snake but just can't decide? Well, I'm going to help you with it in this week's show. You're watching Snake Bites. There are so many incredible snakes out there, and you guys know I absolutely love all of them. But when you're thinking about a pet snake, you've got to really take a look and see what would be an awesome choice for you. And again, although there's a million options out there, the most common three snakes I get asked about are corn snakes, ball pythons, and boa constrictors. And although all of them make great pets, there's certainly a lot of differences between those three animals. So I'm going to spend some time in this show and break down what those differences are. So let's go ahead and take a look at some baby snakes. What was Brian's first pet snake? A, corn snake, B, boa constrictor, or C, Burmese python? Go ahead and comment down below and check back later in the show to see if you have the right answer. In this week's Reptile Report Spotlight, we'll be highlighting Pangea forums. Go ahead and check out the URL down below or click on the link in the description. I always say that corn snakes are one of the best pet snakes because they're really placid, they don't get really big, and they're really easy to care for. If there's one downside to corn snakes is that they hatch out relatively small, just like this Anurethrisic or black corn snake. Now this is about 2 months old, so believe it or not, it's grown a little bit. When they hatch, they're just little tiny pencils for sure, and as you can see, they kind of move a lot and are a little bit squirmy as babies. Now when they get bigger, they're much better, but if you're looking for a snake and you're not really comfortable handling snakes yet, corn snakes can sometimes be a little intimidating, and usually they won't bite. But this little bugger is a little bit fired up. But typically they're amazing, amazing animals. Now they will mellow out when they get bigger, but let's go ahead and look at ball pythons and compare them to the action that corn snakes have. Now you guys know that I absolutely love ball pythons, and I think they're one of the best pet snakes out there for sure. This happens to be a 3-month-old ball python that's about 100 grams. Now they're born at about 65 to 70 grams, so you can see it's maybe put on about 25% of its weight, but you certainly get the idea of what a baby ball python is. Now, unlike the corn snake, you can see its behavior is completely different. And this is why they call them ball pythons, because their defensive mechanism is to ball up and just kind of hide. Now, if there's a knock on getting a baby ball python as a pet, is sometimes until they're comfortable, this is all you get, which isn't a problem for some people, but other people want their snakes to be more inquisitive and move around a lot. So you've got the corn snake that's really wiggly, the ball python kind of just hangs out and sits here. Let's go ahead and check out a baby boa. And lastly, it would be baby boa constrictors. Now what's interesting about these guys is they're kind of somewhere in between a ball python and a corn snake, both in size and temperament. They're not nearly as fast moving as a baby corn snake, but they don't just sit there balled up like a baby ball python. So they're really kind of cool to handle at this size. They're really inquisitive. You can see he's looking around, testing the air with that tongue, and he's really wanting to be a part of being handled, which is really cool and one of the reasons why I love boa constrictors so much. But it's not just about baby snakes, is it? Let's go ahead and take a look at what these things look like in the next year. Now, corn snakes actually grow relatively quick, but you gotta remember, they're a kind of small snake anyways. This happens to be about a 10-month-old corn snake, and it's a pretty big size difference from that little snake that I showed you earlier in the show, and you can see they calm down a whole lot. That baby snake was just squirming around. When they get to this age, they're just much more chill and definitely a lot cooler snake. But again, it's only halfway to adulthood. Now, a yearly ball python typically is between the 600 gram and 1,000 gram rate. This happens to be a Mojave GHI, and what a gorgeous snake it is. And she's probably right around that 600 gram mark. And as you can see, when they get bigger, they don't ball up nearly as much. They get a lot more brave when they're this age, which makes them even a cooler pet. Now this is where boas start to get to a point where some people just can't handle them with their size. Now this is only about a 6 or 7 month old boa constrictor. Again, remember that little baby I showed you at the beginning of the show? They grow really quick. Typically, a year-old boa is going to be about 5 and sometimes even 6 foot in length. So again, if you're getting a snake and you don't want a really big animal, boas may not be the right choice for you. But if you don't mind having an animal that's relatively big and you're responsible enough to own them, they are awesome animals. Again, this Sunglow Arabesque is just such a beautiful snake. And as you can see, it's super tame and really inquisitive. Boa's personalities are certainly one of the coolest of all the snakes. The next thing I really want to show you guys is not only the size of adults of those animals, but also talk about handling each one. They're all very different from one another, believe it or not. And let's face it, if you're going to get a pet snake, it's going to be really important that you're going to enjoy handling it right. Now this happens to be an adult corn snake. What a beautiful snake it is. They typically only get 4 to 5 foot, this one being pretty average, but believe it or not, the largest one ever was 72 inches. That's 6 foot. That's one big corn snake. But I tell you what, even though they're a little squirmy as babies, they're fantastic animals as adults. This is an adult ball python. Well, it's not a normal ball python, obviously. This is a blue-eyed leucistic, and she's about 4.5 foot long and probably 2,500 to 3,000 grams. It's pretty typical for a normal size for an adult, although there's been snakes that have been excess of 6.5 feet and 10,000 grams. But those are monsters and very rare. But when it comes to a handling snake, I tell you, ball pythons are definitely one of the best because you can see how chill they are. They move very deliberately. They're not fast. So if you're a little bit sketchy around snakes, these guys are absolutely perfect. And hey, if you just want to sit on the couch and watch a movie and have your snake sit there and chill, ball pythons are the perfect choice. I always praise boas as being such incredible animals. After all, it was one of my first snakes I ever got, and I've always loved them to death. But as you can see from this adult female here, they get pretty big. So someone that's just starting out in snakes, this might be a little more than you can handle. But you can see they really are super easy to handle for such a large snake for sure. And I always say it's kind of more of an intermediate snake, to me at least. So when you go from a smaller snake like a corn snake or a ball python, the next step up is a boa before you get into those monsters like Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons. Now this is a pretty average adult female here, probably about 6.5 or 7 foot. 6 to 8 foot is very typical, although they occasionally get 10 foot. And there's been reports of boas up to 15 foot long. But I'll be honest with you, the largest boa I've ever seen was just barely over 10 foot. So that gives you an idea of size and handleability of all those snakes. But let's go ahead and talk about the next things. What do these things feed on? If you're gonna get a snake, you gotta think of all the major things that you need to keep that snake healthy. And one of the big parts of that is feeding. Now, one of the nice things about corn snakes is that they eat small meals, especially as babies, like this little baby Pinky Mouse. Now, they're pretty cheap, usually under $1 at any pet shop. You only have to feed them once a week, so it certainly is nice to think that it only costs you $1 a week to keep that pet animal. And they're super easy to feed. Just take some forceps and hand it to them just like that. Or you just leave it in the cage and it's probably going to eat overnight. Now with corn snakes, as they get bigger, they're going to move up to fuzzies, and then ultimately an adult is going to eat frozen thawed mice. A frozen thawed mouse is typically under $2, maybe $2.50 at the very most at the pet shops. So they're still relatively easy to get and also extremely inexpensive. Now, ball pythons are a completely different game when it comes to feeding, and if there's a knock on ball pythons, it is absolutely their feeding preferences. As babies, oftentimes they want live, and even as adults, a lot of our adults will eat live. But every now and then, you can get an animal to take frozen just like that. And this is a frozen mouse. Again, a couple bucks at most pet shops, which are really awesome. But as adults, they're gonna eat medium rats. And unfortunately, if there's a knock on them, again, is the fact that they're sometimes a little bit finicky feeders. As a matter of fact, some adult ball pythons will go off of food for 3 or 4 months each year just for no reason whatsoever. Now, with a guy like me that has thousands of snakes, it doesn't bother me at all. I just offer them food. If they don't eat, I feed the next one. But someone that has a pet snake, oftentimes you want to see that snake eat each week, so a ball python may be a problem for you. Now, boas are certainly the largest of the 3 snakes, so when they get to adult size, they're gonna need a pretty good sized meal, and that's adult frozen rat. Now, the good thing is that they almost always eat frozen, which is really awesome because you can buy 10 rats and stick them in the freezer right next to your steak. Although they're kind of pricey, they're about $7 or $8 a piece at most pet shops, but sometimes you can find them online wholesale for about $4 or $5, which is pretty awesome, and they eat really cool. And I tell you what, boas are definitely typically never a problem when it comes to food, but you have to make sure to keep your hand out of the way because you don't want to be on the business end of a boa constrictor. So that basically covers the feeding requirements for those 3 snakes, so you can choose which animal you think is best for you. Let's go ahead and look at caging requirements. When buying any animal, you have to consider the cost of everything, not just the cost of the animal. And caging is oftentimes more expensive than the animal itself. Corn snakes, ball pythons, and boa constrictors are all pretty simple animals. The good news is you don't need expensive lighting because these snakes don't need UVB bulbs. They spend most of their days hiding anyway, so they get very little sunlight. They come out maybe in the morning and at dusk to sun themselves and warm up a little bit, but that's about it. Now, we keep corn snakes in a rack system just like this, and these are 28-quart Rubbermaids. They just have bedding and a good water source, and of course they have heat tape at the back. With corn snakes, you want to keep them about 82 degrees with a hot spot in the upper 80s, and that's about it. But if you have a cage that you're buying, you're probably going to want something anywhere from a 15-gallon all the way up to a 29-gallon for an adult corn snake, and just some cool stuff in there. Make sure the temperatures are right, and it's pretty simple. Now, ball pythons are one of the easiest snakes when it comes to caging requirements. We keep them in rack systems just like this, and with these racks, you don't even really need a hide box because they can push their way to the back and feel real secure. If you're going to keep them in a terrarium or a cage, you're probably going to want to go with something that's about a 29 or a 35-gallon, but you're going to want to make sure that there's a nice hide box in there. Again, they don't climb hardly at all, so you don't need a lot of height. These CB70s here are 33.5 inches by 18 inches by only 6 inches tall, and they do absolutely perfect in this type of environment. And lastly, boa constrictors. We keep them in 3-foot by 3-foot or 4-foot by 3-foot cages. But if you're keeping them in an aquarium, you're going to need something at least 55 gallons, or even better yet, probably a 90-gallon cage. Or you can have something built that, again, is 4x2 or 4x3, and it'll be perfect for them. So there it is, guys. I've given you the requirements for all those snakes and the pros and cons. I tell you, all 3 snakes are winners in my book, and I have no doubt that one of them will be an awesome pet for you or anyone else you know.
Dude, why are you working without your shirt on? Especially without chest hair, man. That's embarrassing.
Dude, what are you talking about? It's coming in pretty good.
Dude, man, come on, man. This is what a man's supposed to look like right here, dude. This is, haven't you seen Austin Powers?
This is what real chest hair looks like on a man. I mean, this is...
What are you guys talking about?
I'm just showing Mike what a man's chest hair is supposed to look like.
Well, what do you guys think of this?
What was Brian's first pet snake? If you said C, Burmese python, you're 100% correct. Good job.
Hey guys, today we covered 3 of the most popular starter pet snakes, but there's a lot of disagreement in that field too. A lot of you think that there are different kinds of snakes that would make great first pets too. So I want to know, what snake do you think is the best first snake? Leave a comment below and let us know.
So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and maybe I was able to shine a little light on a cool pet snake for you in the future. If you want more tips and tricks, go ahead and follow me over on Facebook and Twitter @SnakeBitesTV. Until next week, you've been watching Snake Bites.